Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the GallowgateShots YouTube channel for this brand new episode of the Away Say, looking ahead to the massively exciting Super Sunday clash with Wolves, another game that's been picked for TV for some reason. I don't know why they keep doing this. Joining us this week is Dave from Talking Wolves. Thanks for coming on.
No problem, mate. My pleasure. Good to be on.
Good. Yeah, we're recording this just after a Wolves game. How have you got on tonight?
Well, we've beaten Slovakian leaders, Slovan Bratislava, 2-1. 1-0 down at half time, so it was a bit twitchy, but managed to turn it around in the end. Got a red card at the end as well, which isn't ideal, but another win in Europe. So hopefully we can. I think we're on a 7-match unbeaten run at the moment in all comps. So still not been convincing so far this season, which I'm sure we'll talk about more later on in the video. But yeah, still a win's a win.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about Wolves and whether they could sort of hack the Europa League run. We've seen it in the past with, I think Burnley springs to mind straight away, where they're obviously such a solid Premier League team, and they had that one season in the Europa League and they were abysmal and they really almost went down. Newcastle fans will say the same thing. We had that fifth place finish under Pardew, and then we played in the Europa League after losing a lot of our best players and then almost went down ourselves. I've seen talk that Wolves have struggled this year, but I'm not really minded to agree with them. I don't know what your thoughts are around that, around the Europa League and the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you. I think the start of the season was a little bit difficult because, like most of the teams, Wolves didn't have, unlike most of the teams, rather, Wolves didn't have a pre-season at all. Our only friendlies were when we played, like you guys, in the Asia Trophy and so on. So after that, we just played our Europa qualifying games as our pre-season, really. So we didn't have any other friendlies or anything like that. So to come into the Premier League season, we got shafted by VAR on the opening day, which obviously didn't quite help. But yeah, results haven't been fantastic. Performances have looked a little bit tired at times. But for a team, a lot of people saying we're struggling with it. We're still sort of mid-table. We're ahead of Manchester United, as most teams are anyway. We're sort of 11th, 12th in the league. So yeah, we're doing okay. It could be better, as I think most people know. But there's a long way left. Wolves are at the moment with 5 points behind the point where we were last season. At this point last season, but I think we'd lost about 7 games in a row from this point last season. So if we can pick up a number of points, I think by the end of November we could be on the same sort of points bracket as last year, or even ahead of that. I think we've got a run of about 4 away games in a row now. So it's just getting on top of that. I think with Europe, of course, Wolves have got such a small team. We've got literally a squad of 18. That's it. So it's just rotating players, using the right players at the right times, really.
Yeah, I think I've not kept tabs on Wolves that much in Europe, but every single game seems to be Jimenez scoring one or scoring a penalty, and that guy is he was a bit of a fantasy football legend last year, and then didn't really seem to start that well. But then you look at him across all competitions, and he's still firing. Really, you talk about Wolves' sort of small squad. Did they add to it much for this season, or not much?
Well, the big purchases were Dendoncker and Jimenez, who were already at the club last season. They would turn their moves into permanent deals. Then we had Cavallero and Costa obviously leave the club. And then the only other big signings in really was Patrick Catroni from AC Milan and Vallejo, who came in from Real Madrid, who's a defender. So other than that, we haven't really added to the squad number-wise. We've probably added quality, but not depth really. So for argument's sake, today we had a youngster from the under-23s on the bench. I think we will start to use that a little bit more. But it will be interesting to see how we go and how much of this squad that we need to use. We're regularly rotating with the key first team players, and at the moment it's working well. And touch wood, we haven't had any injuries as of yet. But when injuries and suspensions start to come into play, I think that's when we're going to see the big test for Wolves really.
Are the resources there at Wolves? Because there's been a lot of talk about Nuno and a lot of talk about this Portuguese scout that seems to be just getting all of these, like Patricio and Moutinho, definitely some under the table dealings going on there.
Yeah.
But you don't hear much about Wolves' owner. I mean, I don't have a clue who he is. What's he like? What's his money situation like? Does he have the capacity to spend a bit more?
Yeah. So at the start of, I'm probably going to get the season wrong. I think it was the 16-17 season. We were bought by a big Chinese conglomerate called Fosun. So they're like an investment group. So they're worth an absolute fortune. I think the owner himself's worth about, I think the company's worth about 9 billion, or that might be the owner. But they're worth a fair whack anyway. So obviously the first season in the Championship we spent a load of money, Helder Costa and so on coming in. But we really struggled that year. We had Paul Lambert in charge, and we just didn't really get going. Paul Lambert was then sacked, and brought Nuno in, who just left the manager as manager of Porto, which is, you could say, a bit of a step down.
Wasn't it?
Yeah. So he was a goalkeeper at Porto. He'd been at Valencia previously as a manager as well. So to come to the English Championship was you've got to lure him somehow. But that's when we signed the likes of Ruben Neves, who was linked with like Manchester United, Liverpool, and so on a year before. And we'd spent another sort of 30 million in that season. There is a load of money there, but it's balancing that. You could throw, I think they were cautious, especially this year, to throw another 100 million at the transfers and for us to not actually qualify for Europe because the transfer window shut before the group stage started. And I think that's what they were cautious of. I think they could have gone for more loan deals. And of course, if it didn't work out, then let those loan deals run. But there is money there to spend, and I think if we do qualify for the Europa League knockouts, a lot of money may be spent in January again.
Yeah, it's interesting because I saw, obviously there's been a bit of a push. There was the Asia Trophy, but there seems to have been a big push at Wolves to get big in China. I saw they were pushing loads and loads of market, and I was wondering whether they were just doing it for a marketing point of view, but obviously with the Chinese link there, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think with that Chinese thing as well, they are trying desperately for that. So when we were at the Asia Trophy, they'd opened Chinese Wolves, Chinese mega
that's what I saw. Yeah,
we've probably got about 5 or 6 Chinese players on the books now. So I think they're just trying very hard just to find that.
I've never heard of any of this.
One breakthrough Chinese star, because I think if you can find one player that's got a little bit of talent, mate, he's going to blow up in China. So we've got we signed one the first year who's like a Swiss kid, but like obviously half Chinese. We've signed basically any player of Chinese heritage playing in England in academies. We've signed. So a guy from Notts County, a guy from Oxford, they've all come in. A guy that we'd signed from Spain who was Chinese, but he couldn't get a work permit, so he just keeps getting loaned out. But I think, and we were linked with like the Chinese league all-time top goal scorer at one point as well, who's now gone to Spain. So I think that, as I say, I think they're trying very hard just to get that one player, and I think they've opened like academies in like Hong Kong and stuff like that. But yeah.
I think in that part of the world though, they do go crazy for that one breakout star. I mean, you even see it at Newcastle with. I mean, we have Ki and we have Muto, and you do see the Korean flags. And I know a lot of Japanese lads who love the fact that we've got a Japanese player. And obviously with Ji-Sung Park and Man United, the amount of shirt sales they made just from him alone, it's a no-brainer to have someone like that.
Park was signed for United literally for marketing, and he actually turned out to be a half-decent player, I think. But with Son at Spurs, when I went to Spurs away last year, there were so many Koreans that had gone just to watch Son play. So for a marketing point of view, as most people know, it's genius, really.
And if obviously a player does break through from the Chinese ranks, then you've got a good player as well that no one else is going to get. So it's going to work.
Exactly.
When we were a few seasons ago, we were both in the Championship together. I had the best away day of my life at Wolverhampton, not for the match in particular, but just the hilarity of not being able to get a bus home and having to. Yeah, it was. I'm not going to get into it now, but it was just amazing. Running out, missing the bus, missing the train, having no money. But we were pretty much level pegging, I would say, as teams at that point. I think Wolves at that point were seen as one of the better teams in the league, but it was us and Brighton who pulled away at the end.
Yeah.
I would say, and I think even the most optimistic Newcastle fan would say that you've leapfrogged us now, despite not really seeming to put a lot of money in. Why do you think we're so far apart now in terms of league position and sort of prestige?
I'm not too sure what the figures are. Wolves have spent a big amount since then, to be fair. Possibly more than Newcastle, I'd say. But I think obviously that momentum of that Championship winning season going into last season as well, I think we went on a high and we just carried on and that's what it is. And I don't think things behind the scenes at Newcastle have been great either. Obviously with Rafa going, I think that was a big loss for you guys. Steve Bruce coming in, exactly. I think and obviously your likes of Rondon and Perez all going as well. So it's I don't know. I think it's behind the scenes. A lot of things can affect it too, and I think that's what's happened to Newcastle. And no disrespect to you guys, I just don't think you've improved the squad enough.
No,
really.
I think we'd all agree with you. And we had this Last video I did, I spoke to the Leicester fan, and they were saying that that there's a plan with their owner, and I think you could say the same thing for Wolves. There's a plan, even with Bournemouth. There seems to be some sort of a plan. Whereas with us, I mean, we've said this to death on these videos and in the other podcast videos and things. We had the opportunity to really build on something after we got promoted with a world-class manager, a good core of players. That was the time to put a bit of money in and try and do something. But obviously, that's not why we exist. We exist to be a branch of Sports Direct. So it's really difficult. And you're right, losing Rondon was difficult. We've replaced him with an unproven lad in Joe Linton who looks good, but we've got I don't get into my stats too much, but we've got the lowest expected goals of any team by a long way. We don't create any chances. So it's difficult. I mean, when you look at Newcastle's team, you might not have seen much of us this year, but what do you think seems to be the problem on the pitch?
Well, you mentioned there Joe Linton. Wolves were linked with him earlier in the summer before Newcastle signed him, and I was actually really excited if Wolves were able to pick him up, because I think he was at a similar age. He's got very similar stats to someone like Roberto Firmino, who played for Hoffenheim as well.
I think it was identical.
So I put a tweet about it, like obviously at the time, and I looked at him, and as you say, like they were so alike. And I think it was quite a high fee. I don't know, was it like 30-40 million you guys ended up spending on him? So I think that is obviously the biggest risk of it. But in 4 or 5 years' time, if he's that sort of quality as Firmino, you're going to get your money back and more. But I think at the moment you guys are probably similar to Wolves. Like Wolves, we checked some stats today, are bottom of the Premier League in terms of chances created. We've both sides. I think we've got quality strike force as such, but it's actually getting the ball up to him and in the right areas. Wolves have really struggled to get the ball in and around the area. Like Patrick Atrone, I think it's a steal in terms of how much we paid for him, but he's like a poacher. He needs the ball in the area. He can't really make up his own chances, and that's I think where we're struggling a little bit at the moment. But I think with Newcastle as well, I know the likes of Lascelles and Shah are pretty good defensively, but other than that, I just don't. No disrespect to you guys, I just don't know where the quality comes from in the team, really.
Yeah, it is difficult. The one sort of ray of hope this season really has been the Longstaffs continuing how they did last time. Obviously, it was all about Sean Longstaff, and it's easy to forget with Matty coming through that Sean's only been around for 12 Premier League games, I think it is. So those two keeping out Key and keeping out Shelvey and the rest of our centre midfielders, that's been a nice highlight. And I guess with you guys, you mentioned a little bit about the academy, but there's that Morgan Gibbs-White as well, he was really good last year, but doesn't seem to have done anything this year. I don't know what's happened to him.
Morgan is one of those sort of media hype boys, I think. He's been atrocious this year for Wolves. And I think everyone in the Wolves fan base believes he should have probably got a loan move out, possibly to a championship team at the start of this season. But I think the Europa League campaign has sort of saved his career at Wolves for this season. But he played again tonight against Bratislava and he wasn't great. But he's like an attacking midfielder, and Wolves systems don't really suit that. So him and Nuno really need to come up with something that's going to suit him as a player. I think he's a little bit too lightweight. But I think in the Championship, where at times you get a little bit more space on the ball, I think that could suit him a little bit more. But as I say, with Wolves being in the Europa, we need all the players we can get. But last year he had 1 or 2 big games, and obviously that got highlighted a lot by the press and Match of the Day. He's in the England under-21s setup, and I think it's always great when you've got an English lad as well, and sort of similar to the Longstaff boys in the middle. But yeah, he's struggling a little bit to do that sort of thing.
You talked about Wolves struggling to create much. I think both of our teams are probably better suited to being on the break.
Yeah.
Even at home, we don't really like to have much of the ball and don't seem to know what to do with it. Is this basically going to be both teams just sat waiting for the other team to attack, do you think? Or how do you see it going?
I think so, yeah. Wolves are similar. I always thought, especially in the Championship, we were a team that just liked to go at teams. But especially in the last year or so, against Manchester United, obviously the bigger sides, obviously, we beat City with 20-odd% possession a few weeks ago. But yeah, we tend to like the other team having possession, and we're sort of like you, we like to wait for it on the break. My issue is with Wolves is if Newcastle do sit back on Sunday and we have too much of the ball, it's actually known what we're going to do with it. So it will be very interesting to see how we set up and how we approach this game on that front, because it sounds like both teams have got a sort of similar way of approaching things. So it will be interesting to see who goes for it first, really.
Yeah, so if you were Steve Bruce, I know that's a horrible thought. But do you think that's the best way to set up? I know Newcastle fans will hate this, but is the best way to play against Wolves just to soak up the pressure and try and beat you on the break?
I think so, to soak it up. As I say, with Wolves, I think that's what Wolves tend to do. Defensively, we're pretty good. So if we could soak up the pressure and catch a team on the break, that's what would work best for Wolves. So although at home, I'm sure Newcastle fans would absolutely hate it to watch sort of 9 or 10 men behind the ball. But I think for you guys, that's probably going to be the best way. I mean, obviously, I only caught the highlights of the game against Chelsea, but you seem to sit pretty deep against them, and you did pretty well for the
Yeah,
majority of
we
the
did
game.
do all right
Trying to
in that
soak it
game,
up.
to be fair. Yeah, we didn't create a lot, but we didn't embarrass ourselves. And I think if that performance had happened under Rafa, people wouldn't have been as annoyed.
Batted an eyelid, yeah.
And I think Rafa got loads of criticism for playing too defensively from media. But we can't really play any other way. We don't have a lot. And I think on the break we do look okay. We just need that final killer pass. Almiron is rapid. He should be the perfect player to counter attack with, but he just can't get it going. And we've got Saint Maximin who's finally fit, who is
He looked
very
unreal the other day against
yeah,
United.
he's Ben Arthur-esque. He looks like he could just beat any defender in the world, but actually looks like he might have a final ball as well.
Yeah.
So if he sits up on that left-hand side, who's he going to be up against in the Wolves' defence?
So if he's on the left, he would
Yeah.
probably be up against either Matt Doherty or Adama Traore, depending who starts there. So Adama
I'll take
versus
Traore.
Maximin. Yeah, that could be a good race, to be
That's
fair.
a great
But
foot race, yeah.
yeah, but it'll be interesting to see how we'll set up, because like today we played with against Bratislava, 5 at the back, 3 in the middle and 2 up front, and we started the same against Southampton as well. But I actually prefer when we play 3 up top, especially against the teams like the Newcastles, who we could probably get something out of. So Adama, it came on today and completely changed the game, and I think against that, like the shakiness maybe of Newcastle's back four, he could really make something happen. If not, you got Matt Doherty, who obviously is very experienced and he had a great season last year, slowly getting into it after a poor start. But yeah, I think that'll be an interesting battle on that side, definitely.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I know you've got places to be soon, so I'll just get a prediction from you if you don't mind.
Yeah, I always back my own team on these, unfortunately. So it could go either way. I can honestly see Newcastle nicking something out of the game, and both games were quite entertaining. And obviously the full 90 last year. I mean, both games had 2 late goals from Wolves, home and away. But I am gonna back Wolves to get a 2-1 victory. I can see you boys scoring, probably making it very difficult for Wolves. But I think we will grab the 3 points.
Yeah, I can't really argue with that too much. In fairness, we haven't scored. I don't know if we've scored more than 1 goal all season. But I'm going to go the other way. I think it's a really hard one to call because I think, like you've said, we are 2 very similar teams on the pitch. So I'm going to say we're going to sneak it 2-1. So we'll see which 2-1 is right. No doubt it'll be 0-0 or 7-0 or something. We'll both be horribly wrong. But yeah, that about does it. Appreciate you coming on. And
My pleasure.
Yeah, no problem. And all the best for Sunday.
Thank you. May the best team win. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.